Welcome to another episode of College Life News. It is May 9th, 2011, and we are going to have an episode of College Life News filled with updates on a lot of stories that we commented on last week. There have been new updates in these stories that we just want to get out there so you can have as much information. First one we're going to talk about is Paula Abdul. It is official now that she'll be joining X Factor as a fourth judge. Fox announced Sunday that she will be joining X Factor, and Simon Cowell made a comment saying that the show would never have been the same without Paula, and he can't believe he's saying it, but he has missed being on a show with her, and he is so excited that she's going to be back. So that's interesting that they're going to be working together again, which it's weird too at the same time, but whatever. It's basically American Idol again with just different age limits and stuff. It's going to be the same thing. So we'll see what happens with that. There were also rumors that Mariah Carey would be in contention for a judge's spot, but she said it was said last month that she would not be a judge. But she will be involved some other way with the live shows, which we don't really know what way that is yet, but maybe that will be revealed shortly. Another story that we talked about last week, and actually the week before too, was about the shuttle Endeavor's final launch. Now NASA is saying that it will not launch any earlier than May 16th. It was originally supposed to launch on April 29th, and this launch was scrubbed when engineers detected a failure in one of the two heater circuits associated with the auxiliary power unit. Now, these heaters are required to keep the APU's hydrazine from freezing on orbit. The failure appears to be a power problem with the aft load control assembly, which is a box of switches controlling power feeds. Endeavor will fly out on its 25th and final flight to deliver the $2 billion alpha magnetic spectrometer particle detector to the International Space Station. The Endeavor has been promised to the California Science Center in Los Angeles when it returns from space. It was originally the replacement ship for Challenger, which was lost in the 1986 explosion when it ascended over the Atlantic Ocean and killed 7 astronauts. The Endeavor will be the second of NASA's 3 surviving shuttles to be retired. Discovery took its final flight in March, and that aircraft will be transferred to the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, and then the Atlantis will have its final launch for what is scheduled right now on June 28th, but we'll see. First we have to get the Endeavor up, which is taking a lot longer than expected, and because it is the final flight, a lot of people really are excited about it, want to see it, and it keeps getting pushed back further and further. But for right now, it's scheduled to launch Monday, May 16th at 8:56 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're just waiting for that to hear if that's going to go through. Last week we also talked about Mariah Carey and Nick Cannon had their twins. Well, last week they revealed the names of the twins. First, Mariah Carey went to her Twitter on Tuesday and gave a hint that both of the twins were named with names that started with M. So then a lot of people were guessing what could they be. Well, your chances of guessing what these names were was highly unlikely. They're not what we would consider normal names. They're unusual, which is not... That's kind of the norm now for celebrities, but the couple named their son Moroccan Scott Cannon and their daughter Monroe Cannon. It was explained later on Mariah Carey's website that Scott is her husband's middle name as well as his grandmother's maiden name, so they wanted to keep that in the family, keep that tradition. And the baby's first name comes from singing history, basically. It's from the top tier of the singer's New York apartment called the Moroccan Room. which is named for that because it's Moroccan-themed decor. It's also where the couple got engaged, so they used Moroccan for their son's first name as a memory, as just a tribute to that room and where they got engaged and just all that. Now, their daughter's name, you can kind of guess where that came from. It was inspired by Marilyn Monroe, which we have learned Marilyn Monroe has been an inspiration to Mariah Carey her whole life. Now, Monroe does not have a middle name because Mariah Carey herself does not have a middle name. But overall, the two are excited and thrilled to have 2 new bundles of joy. Also, a big story last week that was huge among everyone was the news that Osama bin Laden had been killed, and there were just a lot of emotions flying, and there were doubts, and did this really happen, and cheers, and other people who were fearful of what was to come. And since then, there's been a lot of things going on, but a lot of the big things that I'm going to share is that we've been getting new details, and those details about how he was killed are constantly changing. The story's changing bit by bit. And also, it's been told that the government is not going to release the bin Laden photos. Now, this upset a lot of people because they think that the government is lying about killing Osama bin Laden, and that they just are doing it to help Barack Obama's popularity polls. And his polls have gone, his approval rating has gone up, and there's a lot of anger. I don't know why people want to see those photos. Well, I get it somewhat. They want to know for sure that he's dead and have that comfort, as some refer to it. I don't feel that it is a comfort. It's what it is. And so they're saying, if we don't see these photos, he's not really dead. We don't believe it. It's just a scam. Well, then it came out later in the week that Al-Qaeda confirmed that Osama bin Laden is in fact dead, which took care of some of the naysayers, but you're always going to have those people, like, even though Obama released his birth certificate, there are people still saying he wasn't born here. You're always going to have those people who want to have the doubt, who want to have that. And to release those photos, it would just be spread out worldwide. And do we want to have this on the front of our newspapers where kids are walking by seeing it? It's going to be a graphic image. It's just probably a good idea not to release those images. There was also a big thing this weekend that took place. It happens every year. You might have heard of it, the Kentucky Derby. Now, before we get to the Kentucky Derby, I want to talk about the Kentucky Oaks, which is a smaller race that happens the day before the Kentucky Derby. Now, there's a lot of talking this year because it turned out Bobby Flay, that's right, the chef Bobby Flay, had a horse entered into the Kentucky Oaks. Now, unfortunately, that horse did not do well. It finished in the back of the pack, and it didn't do well, but it was surprising to just hear about how Bobby Flay talked about loving having this horse and loving that his quiet time in the morning when he just can go out and watch the horses run. It's really interesting. Okay, now moving on to the Kentucky Derby, actually. Now, the winner of the Kentucky Derby was the horse Animal Kingdom. Now, after the race, there was a flash of a horse being taken into one of the on-track ambulances, which kind of got people a little riled up because in past years, especially the last few years, there have been horses that at the end of the race have collapsed, have had to been put down, had serious injuries. Usually when you see the ambulance on the track, it is not good. Now, this time, luckily, it was not anything serious. Arch suffered a lateral condylar fracture on his front left leg after the race. From the opening gates, he stumbled, and it looked like there was a problem the whole way through the race. It just didn't look natural the way he was running. So at the end of the race, they pulled up the ambulance, and they put a splint on it, and he got in the ambulance, and he walked in on his own, and he was good. So This is an injury that will require surgery, but it's not a life-threatening injury, which is good. So, there are also a lot of sparks flying in the NASCAR circuit this weekend. Going into the race, a lot of people were watching Ryan Newman and Juan Pablo Montoya. They had gotten into it last week, and they're just saying that there could be some more issues of taking each other out this week. When it came down to the final laps, the rivalry changed to be between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. And if you haven't seen this video, I would definitely go to NASCAR.com, and they have it. They have all the highlights of it, because it's pretty interesting. Now, the winner of the race was Regan Smith. It was his first win, and unfortunately, it was overpowered by the rivalry between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. All the same, though, Regan Smith was extremely happy about his win. So, basically, coming down to the last few laps, it was Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Clint Bowyer coming down the track, and you can't really do 3 wide at Darlington. It's just not a good idea. It's just way too tight. And because they were doing 3 wide, Clint Bowyer got taken out. Well, then there was some bumping between Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, and basically Kyle Busch dove from the top of the track to the bottom of the track and punted, which he intentionally spun Kevin Harvick's car into a wall. And Harvick was not happy about that. So then they did their green-white checker, and they restarted, and they finished the race. Well, at the end of the race, Kevin Harvick got behind Kyle Busch's car and followed him. Now, Kyle Busch did not go down pit road, and they stayed on the track, and they played a little back and forth, but nothing was done. So then Kyle Busch spun his car around and went down pit road, and Harvick somehow got in front of him and stopped his car on pit road, which forced Kyle Busch to stop his car. And after a few minutes, Kevin Harvick got out of the car and went over to Busch's car, and as Kevin Harvick was walking over to Busch's car, Kyle Busch slammed on his gas and turned Harvick's car into a wall. He pushed it forward and it turned into pit wall, and Kyle Busch went down pit road, and Kevin Harvick got a punch in to Kyle Busch as he drove away. Now, punch doesn't really count much for anything because he had a helmet on, but there were sparks flying everywhere. And the really dangerous thing in this whole thing is that when Kyle Busch hit Kevin Harvick's car, he sent it into the wall. There was no one in the driver's seat, no one to control this car. It could have gone anywhere, and there are tons of people on pit road after a race. He could have killed someone or seriously injured him. So it's just, it was a dumb move on his part. And after the race, he gets out of his car and he was doing an interview, just laughing and smirking like it was a joke. He seriously could have killed someone, which is scary. And there's a lot of outrage among fans saying that NASCAR needs to do something. And I agree, they do need to do something. That's dangerous. He shouldn't be doing that. He really could have killed someone or multiple people or injured a lot of people. There's a lot of people on pit road at the end of a race, and NASCAR just can't have that happening. Now, there's no official word on what is going to happen yet. Penalties and fines and all that stuff will not be announced till Tuesday. So it's kind of a wait-and-see game right now. But I would still encourage you to go see the video on NASCAR.com if you haven't seen it. And they do a wonderful job of summing up all the events quickly. They don't show you the unnecessary stuff, but they show you what really counts. That is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoy your week. I'm going to try and do another episode later in the week. If not, I will see you next week, and I hope you guys have a great week.